What you just heard was outlawed, not by NASCAR's rules, but by corporate decree. This engine was so powerful, it wasn't just banned from racing. It was erased from history by the very company that built it. This is the true story of Chevrolet's forbidden 427 mystery motor and the outlawed genius who risked everything to run it, and the explosion that changed racing forever. In 1963, deep inside Detroit's experimental engineering depth, a monster was born, the Chevy 427 mystery motor. Conceived in secrecy and perfected by the rebellious genius Henry "Smokey" Yunick, it was an engine so advanced it terrified rivals and enraged NASCAR. But just as it prepared to dominate, General Motors disowned it, sparking a high-stakes battle of innovation, politics, and defiance that forever changed racing history. The architect. This was magical. America's muscle wars were just beginning to rumble beneath the surface, a quiet storm preparing to unleash chaos on racetracks and highways alike. In GM Experimental Engineering Department, where glass walls hid the smoke-filled air and whispers of forbidden engine projects, Chevrolet's racing division worked on something so audacious, so revolutionary, that even the men designing it didn't fully understand what they had unleashed. This Cold War just got hot, but on the high banks of NASCAR, Chevrolet was losing ground. Their mighty 409 was being outmuscled. They needed a nuclear option. The project was so secret, it didn't even have a name. Inside the General Motors Technical Center in Warren, Michigan, a place they called the War Room, a team of brilliant engineers led by a man named Dick Keenath went to work. Soon, rumors began swirling in racing circles, and whispers of a mystery motor slithered through pit lanes like contraband information. Keenath's team, including valve train expert Gary Van Cott, designed something radical. It wasn't a hemi-copy, it was something new. They called it the Mark II Big Block. But to the world, it would be known only as the mystery motor. Its secret? Canted valve heads. By tilting the valves, they created massive straight-shot ports for air and fuel to flood the cylinders. It breathed like a monster. But a revolutionary engine needs a revolutionary to unleash it. Chevrolet needed a field general who feared no one. They needed Smokey Yunick, mechanic, innovator, rule bender, and genius. Smokey wasn't just another NASCAR engineer. He was a mad scientist of speed, a man who could make an engine breathe fire where others only saw smoke. If anyone could take Chevrolet's untested weapon and turn it into an unstoppable force, it was him. Chevrolet's engineers had been pushing the limits of their W-Series engines, like the 348 and the mighty 409. These power plants had dominated drag strips, but NASCAR was changing. Competitors, especially Ford, were evolving, unveiling larger displacement V8s with advanced breathing capabilities. The era of raw horsepower was entering a new phase, one where airflow dynamics and combustion efficiency mattered as much as cubic inches. And then came the 427 mystery motor, the forbidden offspring of innovation and defiance. Unlike Chevy's older wedge-headed designs, this beast introduced canted valve cylinder heads, an idea borrowed from the gods of engineering rather than Detroit's assembly lines. The valve angles were tilted, offset, staggered, strange, creating a combustion chamber that allowed air and fuel to rush in like a hurricane, producing a volcanic explosion of power. It wasn't just different, it was radical. To the untrained eye, it looked like Chevrolet had crossed into HEMI territory, a bold statement considering Chrysler's dominance in that department. But this wasn't imitation. This was evolution. On paper, the mystery motor was a 427 cubic inch Titan. In reality, it was a ticking time bomb. The engineers knew it, Smokey knew it, and NASCAR would soon learn it the hard way. Smokey's secret weapon. By early 1963, a handful of prototypes began leaking into the wild, carefully delivered to select NASCAR teams under the radar. Smokey Yunick was given one. He locked himself in his Daytona Beach workshop, a dusty temple filled with half-built machines, scattered parts, and a collection of secrets too dangerous to write down. Smokey worked the engine like an alchemist, tweaking, bending, reshaping, and reshuffling components in ways the official manuals didn't dare suggest. Under his touch, the mystery motor became more than an engine. It became a weapon of war. Whispers spread through the paddock at Daytona International Speedway. Something terrifying was coming. Mechanics caught fleeting glances of Smokey's setup, the strange heads, the alien valve geometry, the almost demonic rumble of the motor when he fired it up in the pits. Rival teams exchanged nervous looks, but the real test would come on the high banks, where engines lived or died by fire and friction. Smokey paired with Junior Johnson, a driver as fearless as the machine he was about to command. Together, they prepared to unleash the mystery motor against Ford's most powerful V8s. The sun hung low on race day, a molten disk hovering over Florida's asphalt cathedral. The grandstands trembled with anticipation as the field lined up, engines roaring, exhaust heat warping the air like mirages. From the drop of the green flag, it was clear something extraordinary was happening. Junior Johnson's car didn't just accelerate, it launched. The mystery motor's explosive torque hurled him down the straightaways with an authority that left jaws hanging. Lap after lap, the car devoured its competition, climbing speeds that seemed impossible for its era. Fans were mesmerized. Commentators stumbled over their words, unsure whether they were witnessing innovation or sorcery. Rival pit crews stared silently, knowing they were being outgunned by something they couldn't comprehend. And then, reality came crashing in. Just as the mystery motor began proving its dominance, word came down from the highest levels at General Motors. Pull the plug. Government scrutiny had reached a boiling point. There were whispers of antitrust concerns, political pressure, and quiet phone calls from Washington. GM executives, terrified of provoking regulators, had decided to withdraw from all forms of factory-backed racing. Overnight, funding vanished. Engines were locked away. Engineers reassigned. Officially, Chevrolet wanted nothing to do with motorsports, but Smokey Yunick wasn't a man who obeyed quietly. As the sun set over Daytona, he stood in his garage, staring at the mystery motor like a soldier forbidden to fire his weapon. He could feel it, the raw, untapped power vibrating beneath the hood, the future of performance waiting to be unleashed. GM's orders meant nothing to him. This engine had been built to dominate, and he wasn't about to let it rot in a crate. For a brief, electrifying window of time, the 427 mystery motor had shown the world what was possible. But now, it was an orphan. A revolutionary design abandoned by the very corporation that birthed it. And Smokey? He wasn't finished. War in the shadows. The Daytona race had lit a fuse, and Smokey Yunick knew it. The 427 mystery motor wasn't just another engine. It was a statement of dominance, an engineering manifesto that screamed louder than any corporate memo ever could. But inside General Motors, boardroom walls rattled with panic. Detroit was on edge. The U.S. government had been tightening its grip on the automotive industry, accusing GM of monopolistic behavior and unfair market dominance. High-ranking executives feared a public backlash if they were seen openly funding racing programs while competitors struggled to keep up. Motorsports, once the secret battlefield of engineering supremacy, had suddenly become politically radioactive. So GM issued the command, no more racing, no more development, shut it down. For the engineers who had poured their souls into the mystery motor, the order was a death sentence. Files were locked away. Prototypes disappeared into storage, phone calls went unanswered, and just like that, the engine that had rewritten NASCAR's rulebook was erased from Chevrolet's future. But Smokey Yunick wasn't built to obey, Smokey versus NASCAR. While GM bowed to political pressure, Smokey doubled down. He wasn't going to let bureaucracy bury his masterpiece. NASCAR officials, however, were watching him closely. They knew Smokey's reputation. The man had a habit of finding loopholes the way most men found oxygen. He didn't just bend rules, he broke them, reshaped them, and welded them back together in his favor. To NASCAR, the mystery motor was a problem. Its canted valve heads and revolutionary breathing power made Ford's top-tier engines look like relics overnight. Stock car racing had always been a war of inches. But Smokey's engine wasn't playing the same game. It was operating in another dimension entirely. At the next big NASCAR meet, whispers filled the garage area. Rival crews huddled in tight circles, plotting counterattacks. Officials tightened inspections, determined to slow Smokey down. But Smokey wasn't intimidated. He rolled his black and gold Chevy into the pits, the mystery motor snarling like a caged animal beneath the hood. NASCAR inspectors swarmed the car, looking for anything they could flag. Compression ratios, valve geometry, carburetor sizes, even the shape of the exhaust pipes. Smokey leaned back against a toolbox, his ever-present cowboy hat tilted low, chewing on a cigarette with a smirk that said, "Good luck finding it." Because Smokey didn't just build engines, he built traps. Rumor had it that his intake manifolds had hidden passages to redirect airflow. Some swore his fuel lines carried secret reservoirs. Others claimed he used heat treatments that warped engine block tolerances, creating a breathing effect NASCAR hadn't accounted for. And yet, every time officials thought they'd nailed him, Smokey would produce a binder, a grin, and a rulebook quote that justified every last piece of his setup. But NASCAR wasn't the only opponent. The rising storm. As Smokey pushed forward, Ford retaliated. They weren't about to let Chevrolet, especially an outlaw team like Smokey's, rewrite the laws of horsepower without a fight. Behind closed doors, Ford engineers accelerated development on their 427 High-Riser V8, a brutal weapon designed to restore balance on the oval battlefield. The rivalry spilled beyond the track. Corporate spies sniffed through test sessions. Mechanics swapped intel at rural diners after midnight. Everyone wanted to know what Smokey had built, and more importantly, how to beat it. Smokey knew his days of secrecy were numbered. If he wanted to keep the mystery motor alive, he had to strike hard, strike fast, and leave a mark so deep that NASCAR couldn't erase it from history. And then came the 1963 Charlotte 400, where everything changed. Charlotte, the breaking point. The sun baked the Carolina asphalt into a shimmering black mirror. Grandstands overflowed with restless fans, their voices swallowed by the mechanical roar of engines warming up on pit road. For Smokey and Junior Johnson, this was more than a race. It was a statement. They'd been banned from factory support. They were running an engine NASCAR hated, and every other team in the paddock wanted them beaten into dust. When the green flag dropped, Junior Johnson and the mystery motor unleashed chaos. The car screamed down the straightaways, pulling away from Ford, Pontiac, and Dodge alike. Lap after lap, the black and gold Chevy built an insurmountable lead. But as the race wore on, NASCAR officials grew restless. Every pit stop was met with suspicious stares. Smokey's crew worked under a veil of silence, guarding their setup like a state secret. Halfway through the race, a heated argument erupted in the pits. NASCAR inspectors demanded Smokey submit the engine for immediate teardown. Smokey refused, waving his arms and cursing loud enough to turn heads 3 garages down. Tension crackled like static electricity. NASCAR wanted control, Smokey wanted freedom. And then, as if on cue, fate intervened. Junior Johnson's car roared out of turn 3 when suddenly, bang! A plume of white smoke erupted from beneath the hood. The mystery motor had blown. The crowd gasped. Rival crews exhaled in relief. And in NASCAR's control tower, a few officials exchanged quiet, knowing smiles. For Smokey Yunick, the explosion wasn't just an engine failure. It was a declaration of war, the underground fight. After Charlotte, the political temperature around the mystery motor reached critical levels. GM distanced itself completely, refusing to acknowledge Smokey's program. NASCAR doubled inspections, rewriting sections of the rulebook specifically designed to neutralize his advantage. But Smokey didn't quit. If anything, the Charlotte disaster made him more dangerous. He worked nights in his Daytona Beach garage, dissecting the wrecked mystery motor like a surgeon performing an autopsy. Every fragment told him a story. Weaknesses to fix, systems to redesign, secrets to weaponize. The world thought the mystery motor had died on the Charlotte banks. Smokey was about to prove them wrong. Because somewhere deep inside his workshop, Away from corporate eyes and NASCAR's rule book, he began building something new, something faster, something untouchable. Smokey Yunick was preparing to defy the entire system. Resurrection. The smell of burning oil from Charlotte still lingered in Smokey Yunick's mind. The mystery motor had failed spectacularly in front of thousands, but for Smokey, the engine wasn't dead. It was unfinished. Where others saw disaster, Smokey saw data. Where others saw a lost cause, Smokey saw opportunity. Back at his Daytona Beach workshop, the black and gold Chevy sat stripped and silent, its heart ripped out and laid bare across a steel workbench. Smokey crouched over the shattered pistons and fractured valves like a battlefield commander studying the remains of fallen soldiers. He scribbled notes on scraps of paper, muttering to himself, replaying the failure in his head over and over again. Every fragment of metal told him something. Every scar inside the combustion chambers whispered a secret. Every melted bearing gave him clues. He wasn't just rebuilding the mystery motor. He was reinventing it. The forbidden upgrades. By late 1963, Smokey had begun forging a new kind of weapon, one no corporate boardroom or NASCAR rulebook could stop. He experimented with exotic materials, redesigned valve angles, and pushed compression ratios beyond anything Chevrolet had dared attempt. NASCAR demanded that the engine remain stock. Smokey ignored them. GM refused to fund any further development. Smokey didn't care. Ford was flooding tracks with their monstrous 427 high-riser engines, hoping to bury him. Smokey smiled. He knew he had something they didn't: freedom. While corporate-backed teams struggled under layers of red tape, Smokey operated like an outlaw gunslinger. He had no bosses to appease, no shareholders to protect, no press releases to manage. There was only the pursuit of raw, unfiltered speed. The result was a mystery motor even nastier than before, sharper, stronger, and hungrier. It was designed to run hotter, breathe deeper, and deliver a relentless surge of torque that would rip tires to shreds on the straights. But there was one problem. NASCAR hated it, the man they couldn't control. By early 1964, NASCAR officials had rewritten entire sections of their rulebook in response to Smokey's antics. Compression limits, carburetor restrictions, valve geometry inspections, all of it designed to kill his advantage. Smokey treated their rulebook like a chessboard. If NASCAR said no to one trick, he invented another. If they closed one loophole, he carved open 3 more. In one infamous test session, when officials accused him of running a fuel tank larger than regulations allowed, Smokey casually kicked the gas tank onto the garage floor and fired the car up anyway, revealing a secret fuel line hidden inside the chassis itself. The car kept running. NASCAR had no rule against it. Smokey just grinned and tipped his hat. By now, the 427 mystery motor had become more than an engine. It was a symbol of rebellion, of innovation, of the defiance beating in Smokey's chest. He wasn't just fighting for wins, he was fighting for the right to create without permission. And yet, he knew forces were gathering against him. GM had washed its hands of the program. NASCAR was rewriting reality just to contain him. Ford was throwing everything they had into overtaking him on the track. Smokey Yunick was running out of allies, but he wasn't running out of fight. The conclusion. The 1964 NASCAR season opener at Daytona International Speedway was shaping up to be a battle for the ages. Ford had rolled in with its most aggressive lineup yet, fielding an army of 427 high-risers. Pontiac had secretly built experimental power plants of their own. Chrysler was brewing something monstrous in the shadows, an engine with hemispherical heads that would soon redefine speed forever. And then there was Smokey. His black and gold Chevy rolled onto pit road like a silent assassin. The mystery motor, reborn and rebuilt, purred beneath the hood, its canted valves waiting like coiled snakes ready to strike. Rival teams stopped what they were doing just to watch him fire it up. The sound was different this time, deeper, meaner, like thunder rolling across an empty canyon. Smokey stood beside the car, cigarette dangling from his lips, eyes hidden behind dark aviators. He knew this wasn't just a race. This was Judgment Day. If the mystery motor dominated again, NASCAR would have no choice but to act. If it failed, the engine would be buried forever. The green flag dropped. Junior Johnson hammered the throttle, and the car leapt forward like it had been shot from a cannon. The mystery motor screamed past the competition, slicing through the air with terrifying speed. Lap after lap, it widened the gap, the black and gold Chevy becoming a blur of defiance. But inside NASCAR's control tower, panic spread. Officials whispered urgently, scanning lap times and top speeds that made a mockery of their carefully crafted regulations. Radios buzzed, strategies were discussed, decisions were made. Then came the red flag. The race was stopped. The announcers scrambled for explanations, fans roared in confusion, and rival crews exchanged bewildered looks. But in the tower, the verdict had already been written. Smokey Yunick's mystery motor was too powerful to exist. NASCAR officials walked into his pit stall with clipboards and stone-cold faces. They demanded the engine, all of it. Smokey refused. Voices escalated. A crowd gathered. The standoff grew tense enough to draw security. Finally, Smokey stepped forward, wiping sweat and grease from his hands, and said just loud enough for everyone around him to hear, "If you want my engine, boys, you're gonna have to catch it first." And with that, he fired up the car. The roar drowned out every other sound in the pits. Smokey climbed in, slammed it into gear, and before anyone could react, the black and gold Chevy peeled out of Daytona, disappearing into the humid Florida night with NASCAR's forbidden secrets screaming under its hood. The grandstands erupted, officials shouted, engines revved in protest. Ford crews laughed, half in awe, half in fear. The mystery motor was gone. For weeks, NASCAR hunted Smokey Yunick. Rumors spread of late-night test sessions on deserted highways, of secret dyno runs hidden in sheds, of Smokey perfecting an engine that no rule book could ever contain. But the truth was darker than anyone knew. Because while Smokey was busy dodging NASCAR, another giant was watching from above, and they weren't done with him yet. This is Paul from Rare Car Stories. The past is never as simple as it seems. Catch you next time.